I wanted to go into the Army. Just had Army on my brain, I guess, but I was drafted. Recruiter says, no, Army doesn't need anybody else right now. You're gonna be in the Navy. I'm glad I went to the Navy because it was much, much better. Well, communication back then was not quite as good as it is now. So it was mostly visual. Primarily, the flags that we used, each color denomination here had a particular meaning. You would have one of these flags right here, and you were waving like this, and the other ship using binoculars could pick up what that particular flag meant. Do A, B, C, D, but you could do it faster than you think you could, and after a while you can do pretty good. You can see these for a long ways out there, and in the convoy that I was in, Task Force 58, a pair of binoculars were really indispensable. Usually it was indication of what was going to take place in the next 10 or 15 minutes. The entire ship, we were in a group, Task Force 58, and all the ships will turn at one time on a signal. And they all will, on that signal, each one will go to 90 degrees left or whatever the signal was, so that everybody did the same thing at the same time. I was on a light cruiser, and it was a light cruiser was one that was like a heavy cruiser, except our guns were not as big as they are on a heavy cruiser, but it was what they call a cruiser. It was just a task force, and it was made up of battleships, heavy cruisers, light cruisers, destroyers, destroyer escorts, and supply ships. There's a lot of ships in there, in the sea right opposite Japan, where we bombed Japan day and night for a long time until they finally decided they had enough and surrendered. Tokyo was the main target, though. That was the main city, but yeah, we were a mile out, and you're lobbing shells from our guns. We had 6-inch guns and 8-inch guns aboard ship, and they'd travel a long ways. I mean, they would travel to targets that you couldn't see, but they were designed to go a certain distance. Walked the streets of Tokyo the day after they surrendered, in fact, because there was not a living soul there. All of the inhabitants had fled into the interior because we had been bombing them for a couple of weeks, and Tokyo itself was nothing left of it. We were always on the lookout for a periscope that was cutting the water, and when you see that, then our job was to hurl torpedo bombs down there that would sink down, and they were scheduled to go off at a certain depth to try to eliminate a submarine that had been trailing us. You know, I really and truly don't remember any radar, but because the periscope was a thing that the submarine had to stick up out of the water so he could see where he was and what other ships were around. By hearing the noise of the engines on the ship, they could determine there was a ship or a ships many around about. But
and that was sonar, right?
yeah. But when they stuck that periscope up to take a look around, we could see the periscope not just the periscope, but we could see the wake that it made in the water. When that torpedo is shot out from under, from a submarine, we'll say, they leave a trail in the water from the force that they're going through. So you could see them coming, and hopefully you see them far enough away that the order was given to turn left 10 degrees, 5 degrees, whatever it is, to make room. And a lot of these torpedoes missed a lot of ships, but some of them did get torpedoed. You know, most all the ships were built in compartments because every, I don't know, 6 or 8 feet, you always had to step over a compartment. And so a ship could actually be torpedoed, but not sink, because they could block off that particular area and it wouldn't flood the rest of the ship. So we had picked up one seaplane, and it was a kind of a rough day at sea, and the plane started going swinging back and forth and back and forth. And the pilot thought the plane was going to hit the fantail of a ship. So he jumped out of the plane because he didn't want to crash into the ship. And he had his jacket on, Mae West jacket on, so he could float. There I was up on deck, minding my business, not doing anything, and all of a sudden the signal officer is handing me some semaphore flags and telling me, go with the chief, go pick up the naval officer who had just jumped out of the plane. So, and you don't realize how big or how wide that ocean is until you get out there and in a 16-foot boat, and you can get down in one of those swells and you can't even see the ship. And it's a big ship. He was just sitting out there in just in that blue water and just waiting for somebody to pick him up. And we could see him, and sometimes he could not even see the ship because of the swells in the ocean. But we found him. I had to stand up in the boat and signal back to the ship that we had picked the pilot up, and he was okay. And I had 2 guys to hold my feet while I stood up in this little 16-foot boat to signal back to the ship. And this was when we were using A, B, C, semaphore flags, you know. And so, big ocean out there, I know that. I was on the USS Amsterdam, and we were anchored not too very far from the USS Missouri, where this armistice was signed. And I could see through my field glasses the signing of the Declaration of Armistice aboard the ship. And I knew who all the characters were, or the people on the ship. Couldn't hear them, but I could see them. It was quite a day. The war was going to be over, I knew for a fact, because Japan was ready to surrender. And the surrender took place on the Missouri. All of my war experiences were in the South Pacific. It was like 2 wars going on. You know, we had a war in Europe and we had a war in the Pacific. And I met and enjoyed always being with people who gave their time, and a lot of them gave their lives to defend this country. And all of us would do it again if we had to. I guess I'd like to be remembered as somebody who was willing to go, leave family, friends, and fight for the best country that the world has ever known.